The year 2025 changed everything when crypto finally let in the big financial giants. Almost every major bank is getting on board now, including central banks and big US banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. It's crazy that central bankers have been doing this for years, talky about how public blockchains weren't going to be their main emphasis and pushing their CBDCs. They continued saying that they had to keep control of these systems. But you know what? They're now employing smart contracts to automatically handle things like interest on reserves, repos, and even real-time asset purchases on genuine public blockchain networks to try out their monetary policy. Since May 2021, we've seen the OCC, FDIC, and even the Fed virtually spread out the red carpet for banks. They've given these businesses the green light to go right into crypto, get their hands filthy with it, and start delivering crypto-based services to their clients. This is where it gets more crazier. Take a look at this. Bank just became the first bank in the UAE to offer crypto services, and they just announced it on the 29th. Now, their retail customers may buy and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and even XRP directly with AED. This isn't going to happen just once either. This pattern is about to go off the charts all over the place. More and more institutions are offering these same services. Imagine being able to trade, borrow, and lend cryptocurrencies all from your usual banking app. This is how eyes or fly nuts are keeping their place powered. This is the truth. If they don't start doing these things, now they're going to be left behind. It's not a question of if, but when. And this is where we can see that big change that everyone has been talking about. This is when the Bank story truly starts to become fascinating. Let's go back in time to 2021. Thanks a lot to Riz XRP for finding this. I hope I'm saying this right, but Bank is actually the national bank of Ras Al Khaimah, which is an emirate bank in the UAE. Was already connected to Ripple's worldwide bank focus, blockchain network, and RippleNet back in the day. They were utilizing it to power live payments for consumers moving money to Axis Bank in India. And here's the kicker, Ripple had already been working with Axis Bank, so there was this whole network effect going on. We're talking about UAE's Bank using Ripple for rapid blockchain transfers to India, and this was in March 2021. It's really interesting how these long-term relationships that appeared like just another announcement back then are now really important, especially with everything that's going on in crypto. This is why I get mad when people say, oh, that's old news about older Ripple articles or XRP studies. It's not important anymore. Are you serious? It matters more now than ever. These agreements weren't simply for show. They were the building blocks for what we're seeing now. What is going on today really began back then, and Ripple was right in the middle of it all, leading the way. Speaking of that, Ripple has announced that Zambank and Mamo are their first blockchain-powered payments clients in the UAE. Ripple has been very focused on the UAE for a long time. This whole plan actually took off in 2021. But even before that, they were making some fairly big changes in the area. But let's talk about what's going on right now. Ripple keeps making waves in the UAE. And things are getting extremely exciting when you look at what's been happening lately. Thanks to Chad Steingraber for catching this. The Senate Banking Committee made some big news about the Clarity Act and the structure of the crypto industry yesterday. This bill lets banks officially get into DLT and digital asset activity in addition to all the crypto stuff. We're talking about custody, lending, market making, and even running their own blockchain nodes. There's also this wonderful quote in there. The measure also says that the SEC has to build a micro-innovation sandbox. The bottom line is this. This basically gave banks the go-ahead they had been waiting for. I'm bringing all this up because Ripple just gave us strong proof that the great change that everyone has been talking about is really happening right now. What change am I talking about? Let's put the pieces together. We began by having central banks test out blockchain technology. And if central banks are trying out blockchain, you can bet your last dollar that regular banks are doing the same thing. We're talking about the biggest names in the business, Bank of America and JP Morgan. This is from their most recent report with CB Insights and ukcbt.org. And it shows exactly how banks and other financial institutions are literally molding the future through smart investments, collaborations, and all the new uses we're seeing sprout up. The year 2025 is when everything will change. The way traditional finance is putting money into blockchain shows that the change is not just coming, it's occurring right now. Traditional finance isn't just testing the waters anymore. They're making big, brave steps into digital assets because blockchain is giving them what they've wanted for years, services that are cheaper, faster, and easier to get. Plus, it's giving them access to whole new financial options that they didn't have previously. There is a huge rise in the need for blockchain in businesses right now. This statistic will blow your mind. Ripple's own research found that 90% of the world's top financial leaders think blockchain would have a big or huge effect on finance in the next 3 years. That's not a maybe, that's almost everyone. What is making all this enthusiasm happen? Well, blockchain has been showing that it is useful by giving some really amazing benefits. We're talking about transactions that settle almost instantly, cost very little, are available all the time, and are far more transparent than before. Banks and other financial organizations have already made up their minds about whether or not to do something. They're now actively incorporating this technology into the basic foundation of modern finance. Let's look at what blockchain truly means for money. Blockchain is the technology that makes digital assets such cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, and even real-world commodities that have been turned into tokens. In a nutshell, it allows value travel about like information does now, safely, openly, and without a central authority making decisions. You may call it the Internet of Value. Cross-border payments are a great example. Sending money to other countries right now entails a lot of middlemen and old-fashioned payment methods that make things take longer and cost more. So here's what's truly cool. Banks and other financial companies are getting on the blockchain bandwagon to make their work easier, get rid of old systems that keep producing problems, and open up fascinating new possibilities, like letting consumers own parts of real-world assets. The XRP ledger has been doing some really cool things lately, including adding automated market makers and a private decentralized exchange. Plus, the guidelines from the regulators are finally apparent. This perfect storm means big banks can now get into decentralized finance more easily than ever before, and they can do it all legally and be ready to grow. We're about to witness a huge wave of institutions hit the XRP ledger and make institutional DeFi a reality instead of just a dream. As blockchain technology matures, banks are no longer merely watching from the sidelines. They're making savvy bets by putting their money behind firms that are completely changing the way we store digital assets. Make tokens out of real-world assets and help construct the digital infrastructure of the future. We're talking about some serious research that looked into what more than 8,000 blockchain companies and 1,800 banks have been doing over the past 5 years. It tracked everything from direct investments to mergers and partnerships. And get this, CB Insights found that banks actually took part in 33 huge blockchain funding rounds. We're talking about at least $100 million between 2020 and 2024. JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and SBI Group, among others, were not just testing the waters. They were actively taking part in several funding rounds for startups that are constructing the blockchain-based financial systems of the future. What did they want to know the most? The notable winners were platforms for institutional trading infrastructure, staking and tokenization, blockchain payment systems that work all across the world, and safe storage for digital assets. This offers us a pretty clear picture of how these big banks are making their long-term digital asset plans through wise investments and the effects this will have on the whole financial world. It's amazing to see these big companies, the same ones that campaigned against crypto for years, now jumping into the space. What a huge change. And you know what's really cool? We're making real progress on rules and the future of blockchain and financial services. Banks and other financial